to the judge tomorrow and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm mentally ill."
A shocking article just dropped in the Korean news, and it's absolutely devastating. Here's the English translation, but keep in mind, the original piece is in Korean. To make sure everything checks out, I had my good friend Dr. Alaric look it over. You probably know him from the Atosi interview. He's the doctor people joke about because of how he holds his cup. Seriously, someone was poking fun at how the guy holds his drink. I can't remember who exactly said it, but you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Dr. Alaric reviewed the translation just to be safe. Obviously, we used machine translation, but it usually does a pretty solid job. But here's the thing. This article isn't just bad, it's downright terrible news for Johnny Somali. Let me remind you again, the article was originally written in Korean, and we've translated it into English so everyone can clearly understand. But what it reveals is absolutely damaging. Johnny Somali made a huge mistake in his Channel A interview when he openly said that Korea is a colony of the United States. Yes, you heard that right. He actually said it. I mean, how could someone even think that's okay to say? This has to be one of the worst things Johnny Somali could have possibly said, and now this Korean article is putting him on blast for it. Trust me, this isn't just embarrassing, it's catastrophic for his reputation. This situation is seriously triggering some strong feelings right now. Johnny Somali didn't just upset people, he ignited a wave of intense nationalism and patriotic anger. People are genuinely furious. To make things even worse, he's not showing any remorse whatsoever. No apologies, no regrets, absolutely nothing. At this stage, even if he tried to apologize, nobody would believe him. Everyone already knows he's not sorry, not even a little bit. Just in case some of you missed it, I'm going to replay the video because you've got to see this. You can also check it out directly on my channel under the video titled Somali Talks Tough but Runs from Tiny Korean Girl. Trust me, you want to watch this. It got massive attention in Korean news and is seriously damaging his reputation. Watch this closely. Reporter: do you admit the charges? Is there anything you want to say? Do you admit the charges? Don't you want to apologize? Johnny Somali: I love North. I love North. Yes, he actually said, I love North Korea. Unbelievable. On top of that, there was a word that got beeped out, and apparently it was something like, suck my explicit. Obviously, I'm not going to repeat the exact phrase because I'm trying to keep things clean here. I'm actually working on being less controversial, so the algorithm will be happier with me, but you get the idea. And guess what? That offensive beeped out word didn't slip past unnoticed. A different reporter picked up on it and discussed it further in another news segment. Johnny Somali didn't just cross a line, he completely shattered it. This is exactly why people are outraged and calling him out left and right. So, that outrageous interaction led directly to this explosive article. If Johnny Somali hadn't behaved like that, he wouldn't have powerful people publicly calling him out. Now, he's got Professor Sokyo fired up, openly saying, I haven't come to my senses yet, which basically means he's absolutely furious. He's even demanding severe punishment to set an example, suggesting Johnny Somali should be put behind bars for a very long time. And let me make it crystal clear, this isn't just some random opinion. This is coming from a respected professor with serious connections in Korea. When someone like him says jail, people listen. The article refers to Johnny Somali as an American YouTuber, but let me clarify something important here. In Korea, especially among the older generation, people don't always distinguish between platforms like YouTube, Twitch, or Kick. They just lump all streamers together and call everyone a YouTuber, so even if you're streaming on Twitch, they'd still call you a YouTuber, it's just how they understand it. So when you see YouTuber mentioned in this context, just think content creator or streamer. Honestly, you can't blame them. There are so many platforms popping up nowadays, it's hard for anyone to keep track. But one thing is clear, Johnny Somali's actions have gotten him into serious trouble, and now the backlash is growing by the minute. Now here's why this is getting even more intense. Because Johnny Somali didn't just upset regular folks, he got high-ranking professionals like Professor Sokyo absolutely livid. This professor literally said, I haven't come to my senses yet, which translates into plain English as, he's beyond furious. He's demanding a harsh punishment to teach Johnny Somali and anyone else who thinks they can get away with this a serious lesson. We're talking actual jail time here, and not just a slap on the wrist, but a long-term sentence. But let me emphasize again, This isn't my personal opinion. These are the exact words of a highly respected professor with significant influence in Korea. When someone of this stature publicly says Johnny Somali needs prison time, that's not just a warning, it's practically a promise. In the article, Johnny Somali is labeled as an American YouTuber. Now let's clear something up here. In Korea, particularly among older generations, there's not a clear distinction between platforms like YouTube, Twitch, or Kick. They tend to call anyone who streams or creates content online a YouTuber, so even if Johnny Somali was streaming on Twitch or somewhere else, he's still being called a YouTuber here. When you see YouTuber mentioned in this context, just think streamer or content creator. Honestly, there's no blaming them. Keeping up with all these new platforms is tough for everyone. But whatever the label, Johnny Somali is definitely in serious trouble now. His controversial actions aren't just making waves, they're causing an absolute tsunami of backlash. Things are spiraling out of control fast, and Johnny Somali might have just dug himself a hole that's way too deep. This professor is not holding back at all. He explicitly said, "I haven't come to my senses yet," which clearly means he's outraged beyond words. He's calling for a severe and unforgettable punishment, something that'll send a loud and clear message. Translation: Johnny Somali might soon be facing serious jail time, and we're not talking about just a few days, we're talking potentially years behind bars. Now, before anyone gets it twisted, I'm not the one demanding this. It's coming straight from a professor with major clout in Korea. When a prominent figure like this starts publicly demanding heavy punishment, you better believe the consequences are going to be severe. And here's something important to understand. The article refers to Johnny Somali as an American YouTuber. But let me break it down for you. In Korea, especially among the older generation, there isn't a clear distinction between platforms like YouTube, Twitch, or Kick. Basically, they label anyone who streams or creates online content as a YouTuber. So even if Johnny Somali was streaming elsewhere, they'd still tag him with the YouTuber label. Think of it this way, whenever you see YouTuber mentioned here, it's essentially their way of saying streamer or content creator. Honestly, you can't blame them for not knowing the difference. It's hard to keep up with all these platforms. But let's be clear, Johnny Somali's reckless behavior isn't just getting attention, it's causing an absolute outrage across Korea, and now he's paying the price big time. He wanted attention, and he's definitely got it now, but not the kind anyone would want. People are calling for his punishment, and it looks like they won't settle for anything less than jail. Johnny Somali has officially crossed the line, and there's no turning back now. This is getting absolutely wild. I hadn't even heard of Kick until recently, and honestly, I barely followed it at all until I started tracking these troublemaking streamers. It turns out most of these controversial figures, including Johnny Somali, have been causing chaos on Kick. But let's dive deeper into this article, because it's pure dynamite. Johnny Somali is seriously facing major trouble now. This isn't just some small controversy, this is career-ending stuff. The professor mentioned earlier isn't messing around either. He explicitly said, "We must set an example with strong punishment." Translation: he wants the maximum sentence possible for Johnny Somali. Now, people often accuse me of exaggerating or pushing this situation alone, but the reality is different. It's not just me or a few angry commenters online who think Johnny Somali crossed the line. There are highly influential people like this professor demanding severe consequences. He literally stated today, on the 10th, he still hasn't come to his senses, especially after Johnny Somali outrageously said, "Korea is a colony of the United States," right to the press. And let me clarify something here. Due to translation nuances in Asia, the term colony is sometimes translated as vassal state. A vassal state is basically a place that owes allegiance or tribute to a bigger, more powerful country. Unlike traditional colonies, which are directly controlled, a vassal state usually pays tribute, almost like an underling handing over riches to a superior. Historically, China had what's called a treasure fleet. Giant ships that traveled around Asia collecting tribute and gifts from these vassal states. So even though the wording might shift slightly in translation, colony or vassal state, the implication remains the same. Johnny Somali didn't just offend Korea, he outright insulted the nation by calling it a colony or vassal state of the United States, depending on the translation. Either way, it's extremely offensive, and it's no wonder that powerful figures in Korea are demanding serious punishment for Johnny Somali. This isn't just bad, it's catastrophic for his image and possibly his freedom. Exactly. It's like being called a tributary state. The words colony and tributary get used interchangeably sometimes, but the meaning is equally offensive. Professor So didn't hold back criticizing Johnny Somali's disrespectful attitude either. Get this, Somali actually tried entering the courtroom wearing a bright red hat with the slogan, "Make America Great Again." MAGA. Yes, that infamous phrase from former US President Trump's campaign. Of course, he was stopped because court rules don't allow hats, and they had to tell him twice to remove it. But it gets even worse. According to reports, Johnny Somali kept behaving inappropriately, smiling disrespectfully, and even sticking his tongue out at people in the courtroom. That tongue-in-cheek behavior they mentioned literally means he was rudely sticking his tongue out. Believe it or not, that's exactly what he did directly to me, twice. He wasn't subtle either. He stared straight into my eyes as if I was his biggest trigger in that room. There's absolutely no question about it. He singled me out. Now here's an interesting thing I noticed. Another article mentioned that Johnny Somali directed this behavior towards an acquaintance sitting in the courtroom. Let me set the record straight. I quickly reached out and clarified, "Hey, I'm not his acquaintance, I'm his opponent." But just to explain, the translation wasn't great. By acquaintance, they didn't mean we were friends. They simply meant someone he recognized. Still, acquaintance isn't really the right word here. And Professor So didn't stop there. He openly stated, "I haven't come to my senses yet," meaning he's still absolutely furious about Johnny Somali's outrageous behavior. He's clearly demanding severe punishment. No leniency or slap on the wrist will satisfy him or the Korean public. He even raised his voice, stressing the importance of making a powerful example out of Johnny Somali. Bottom line, people in Korea share exactly the same outrage we're feeling. They demand real consequences, not some weak punishment Johnny Somali hopes to get away with. He wants just a slap on the wrist, but that's definitely not going to cut it this time. It's clear as day. Everyone wants justice, and Johnny Somali's disrespectful antics have finally pushed everyone to their breaking point. Now hold on tight, because this next part is even more shocking. Professor So added that Johnny Somali didn't just disrespect Korea by kissing the statue, he openly insulted the entire history of the Republic of Korea. How? By displaying the controversial Rising Sun flag and shouting, "It's not Dokdo, it's Takashima." Let me break that down. Dokdo is an island that Korea historically claims and currently controls, even though Japan tries to maintain a shaky claim over it. Honestly, Japan's claim isn't strong at all, but Johnny Somali deliberately chose this sensitive topic to provoke anger and division. Here's the thing. Johnny Somali doesn't actually care about politics or sides. Remember the MAGA hat he tried wearing in court? He doesn't wear it because he supports Trump or MAGA. He just does it purely to anger and provoke people. He loves causing controversy, and he'll use anything to divide and stir up trouble. Professor So wrapped up his statement strongly, emphasizing, "I just hope that a proper final ruling is made on the incident so that something like this never happens again in Korea." Let me repeat that clearly. I hope a proper final ruling is made so that something like this never happens again in Korea. He's expressing exactly how everyone else feels. This kind of behavior needs to be stopped permanently. This professor is saying exactly what we've all been thinking. Everyone is completely aligned. This ruling needs to set an example, a clear message to every other troublemaker online. Remember, I warned you 3 weeks ago about this kind of behavior spreading. There's another streamer named DBR, and I called it, he wants to be the next Johnny Somali. He literally says he wants to follow in Somali's footsteps. If Johnny Somali isn't held accountable, DBR and others will think they can get away with this behavior too. That's exactly why the final ruling needs to be decisive and tough. There's way too much at stake here. We're not just dealing with one guy, we're dealing with an entire wave of troublemaking streamers ready to follow his lead. This isn't just about punishment, it's about sending a powerful message to prevent future chaos and crimes. Johnny Somali isn't just facing consequences for himself. He's about to become the example nobody wants to follow. And let's make this crystal clear, Johnny Somali isn't in trouble for just one crime. A lot of people have wondered, why hasn't he been charged for disrespecting the Comfort Woman statue? Well, typically, damaging property usually results in just a fine, not serious jail time. This isn't just Korea's law, it's pretty common worldwide. Crimes against people are treated way more seriously than crimes against property, especially if no one was physically hurt. But guess what? The law might actually change because of Johnny Somali's outrageous actions. However, the charges he's currently facing aren't just about damaging property. He's accused of repeatedly causing major disturbances in public, harassing people, disturbing the peace, shutting down businesses, creating chaotic scenes, and generally just being a public menace. Think I'm exaggerating? Check this out. He disrupted an entire concert and shut down a ride at Lotteland, one of Korea's biggest amusement parks. And it gets even darker. Johnny Somali even went so far as to threaten serious physical harm. He actually threatened to commit an unspeakable crime. He literally threatened a group assault against someone. Absolutely disgusting behavior that's too awful to fully repeat here. He's threatened countless people, directly and indirectly, and harmed businesses by causing constant chaos. He's consistently rude, outrageously disruptive, and even behaved disgustingly around minors. Completely unacceptable behavior that can't be ignored. The specific charge mentioned was obstruction of business. Johnny Somali's trial was originally scheduled for 10:10 on the 7th, but he arrived late, causing the court to delay proceedings by an entire hour, finally starting at 11:10. And what exactly did he do? He's accused of severely disrupting business by blasting music obnoxiously loud and even spilling cup ramen all over a table inside a convenience store in Mapo last year. Seriously, who does that? But there's even more, things the article didn't mention but are equally shocking. Johnny Somali famously harassed people with fish, deliberately disturbed buses and subway cars by twerking, dancing provocatively, and generally terrorizing passengers. Imagine having your daily commute ruined by someone twerking in your face. Absolutely unacceptable. Johnny Somali isn't just facing a single accusation. He's facing multiple serious charges because he made a habit of causing non-stop trouble wherever he went. These aren't minor incidents. This is a long pattern of toxic, disruptive, and potentially dangerous behavior. If this doesn't result in a strong punishment, it sends the message that this kind of chaos is acceptable and that can't be allowed to happen. Korea has clearly had enough, and now the law is catching up. Johnny Somali has crossed every possible line, and he's finally about to face serious consequences for his non-stop troublemaking.